Impact investing was created with a beautiful promise that capital can do more than make money, that finance can help to heal the world. But let's be honest. If we say we are creating impact, but we do not really know what changed, for whom, and because of what, then what exactly are we doing? Are we measuring impact? Or are we simply measuring the appearance of the impact?
And for years, the sector has debated standards, SDGs, RS Plus, GRI, SASB, IFC principles, and framework after framework, tools after tools. But a new report by the Geneva Graduate Institute, in collaboration with Impact Investing Solutions, suggests something really uncomfortable. Maybe the sector has been asking the wrong questions.
So today we ask, is impact investing spending more energy proving impact than actually creating it? Every life has a spark, a truth the heart never forgets.
And sometimes one conversation is enough to bring it back.
No ego, no noise, just real insights that inspire and brighten the path ahead.
Because living with love isn't an idea, it's a choice that we make every day.
Welcome to Swiss Impact with Benefits. Today we're discussing one of the most important questions in impact investing. How do we know that impact is real? Not just claimed, beautifully reported, not simply aligned with colorful SDGs icons, but that is actually real.
And this episode is based on a final research report prepared by the students from the Graduate Institute in Geneva in collaboration with Impact Investing Solutions.
The research began with a technical question: can AI help harmonize impact measurement? But it ended with a deep finding. The problem is not only technical, the problem is our incentives. In simple words, enough measurement is often done to look credible, but not always enough to truly understand whether lives, communities, companies, or systems have changed. So today we are enlightened and delighted to welcome the three researchers behind this work. First is Luisa, Morgan, and Abdullah. Welcome to Swiss Impact with Benefits. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. We're very happy to be here.
Thank you. So where are you three based at this moment?
Right now, I'm in London, but I'm normally in Geneva. I'm just working here over the summer.
And you guys, Abdullah, Luisa, where are you right now?
Yeah, we are in Geneva in the library of the Graduate Institute.
Oh, perfect.
Amazing. Let me give a very brief introduction of your background, because even though you're young and amazingly intelligent, you already managed to have profound experience in your areas of expertise. So, Louisa, you hold a master or you're a master student in international and development studies at Geneva Graduate Institute, specializing in sustainable trade and finance. You're currently an intern at UNSTAD International Trade and Commodities Division. Great to have you with us again.
And Abdullah Nazeri, so you have a bachelor's degree in international business management, also from Geneva School of Business Administration. You have worked with the International Committee of the Red Cross. That's very cool. And State of Geneva's Department of Public Education. And is now pursuing your master's at the Geneva Graduate Institute, specializing in human rights and humanitarianism. That's really a very cool combination.
And now, Morgan, you're a French-German graduate student at Geneva Graduate Institute with a strong background in startups and innovation. Before coming to Switzerland, you ran an organization focused on accelerating startup growth in emerging markets, worked with hundreds of founders across 5 continents, and advised governments on innovation policy. So it's perfect combination.
This is really a combination because, Luisa, you're bringing finance and sustainable trade lens. Abdullah is bringing human rights and humanitarian lens. And Morgan, you are bringing startup innovation and policy lens. So let's get straight to it. So, Morgan, let's begin with you. When the research started, the assumption was that the main problem was technical fragmentation, too many frameworks, too many metrics, too many complexity. What did the research actually find?
Well, what we found was actually incredibly surprising. The more we did research, the more we thought that we might be asking the wrong question. We saw that fragmentation is a real problem, but it isn't really the core at all, and that the real barrier is rather on the incentive side. There are lots of tools, but there isn't really as much, whether it's motivation or just incentives to use it really, really rigorously.
That's good. So, Luisa, then from a sustainable finance perspective, why does impact measurement matter at all? Why should investor care about it beyond reputation, marketing, and annual reporting?
Well, this is a broad question indeed, because the incentives, again, come from a variety of stakeholders, and usually they are worried about what the market is rewarding. So, if the market rewards ESG investments, environmental, social, and government investments, then that's what companies will do. And in the case of our research, we realize that the incentives are quite scattered at the moment. So this has to be put into account.
Okay. And Abdullah, from human rights and humanitarian perspective, why is this not only a technical question? Why is it also about people's lives, dignity, and whether communities are actually better off?
That's a good question. One of the things actually that surprised me when doing interviews is that the beneficiary feedback were missing a lot from the measurement. So, for example, a lot of people mentioned that beneficiaries should be involved more into assessing the real impact, because what we do right now is mainly measuring outputs more than impact. So including beneficiaries, so having the human at the center should be really the core thing to solve right now.
Right. So the question is, do we truly want to create impact and know whether impact happen, right? So that's what my feeling is, that many are still just pretending and stopping at the outputs. Count people instead of counting how did the people's life changed, as an example. Okay, now let's dive into the famous alphabet soup: SDGs, IRIS Plus, GRI, PRI, GIRS, IFC. For investors, these frameworks may look reassuring. For founders, they may feel like homework from 10 different teachers. So, Luisa, is the real problem that there are too many frameworks, or is the deeper problem that nobody is strongly incentivized to use them seriously?
Yeah, I'd say that the second option is mostly what we're seeing, at least from after doing the research. Um, the main question should shift, after all, from, oh, how to unify the frameworks, and go a little bit back in terms of, okay, what are we measuring and what is it for? So having this common understanding is crucial in the moment if the sector really wants to be in the same page in terms of what impact really is.
And Morgan, you had worked with so many founders across the emerging market. When founders are asked to report impact for different investors, what happens in reality? And do they really measure deeply, or do they produce what they need to survive the fundraising process?
Yeah, it is really difficult. I mean, naturally, when you speak about startups, about young companies, they are really resource constrained. So, as to what they're doing, I'd say they're doing the best they can. They don't really have that strong incentives to try to spend even more of their limited resources that they have in impact measurement. So what we see that they do is that they usually rely on narrative-based storytelling, showing examples of how they've improved people's lives, as well as some broad metrics for the sort of output that they get, whether it's, how much better wind turbines can work, or how much better certain renewable energy sources can work, but not really because it's difficult on the actual impact level.
Abdullah, now then you will take the biggest question. So, what's the problem? Because many people in this field, in impact investing, do care to create impact. I know that. We are one of those. In our system, is then our system wrongly designed to incentivize profit over impact, or what is wrong?
I wouldn't say really that what is wrong is looking for profit, because at the end of the day, if there is absolutely no profit, then no investor will actually put the money for these type of projects, helping mainly people affected in low income countries usually. So at the end of the day, we need to have at least some profits. But the thing is that it's important to also have some freedom and some specific thresholds to reach and achieve, to really try to create impact, not really measuring activity and creating just activities. So, for example, reaching out some specific number of beneficiaries, but really trying to do the best to change the lives of people who try to help.
One of the interesting findings and how you innovatively put it out, the famous phrase from the report, credibility, sufficiency, equilibrium. Can you please explain in simple words what it is? But basically, it's like everyone does just do enough measurement to look serious, but not enough to truly impact? Or how do you define that?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. So what we have found is that, as you put it, people use measurement to startups. I mean, use measurement to be credible. Impact investors do want to see startups that are taking impact seriously. That's why they are in the impact investment space. But a lot of the time, since founders don't have the incentive of unlocking huge extra sums of investment if they just go the extra mile in impact, even the founders that are doing a lot and a lot of measurement say it seems like it's more of a tick the box process for the investor, where the investor can now say, I've got this startup, they're doing RCTs to prove that they have an impact. But actually, it's just about credibility. And so credibility becomes sufficient in impact measurement. And this is a self-reinforcing equilibrium because the incentives are the way they are.
Nice. Nice status quo. Everyone is just in the comfort zone of doing enough, but impact, the profound impact, is still not the priority.
So,
Ben, yes.
and why do you think the market does not reward founders or investors who measure impact more rigorously?
Yeah, well, what we've been seeing, what we checked after talking to the interviewees is that unfortunately, the market follows almost their own rules. So we have philanthropy in one side, and of course, impact investing wants to set like a middle ground on just philanthropy and also just receiving revenues or just looking into the profit side of it. So what we've the information we've got after the interviews was mostly that unfortunately the market right now might be in a plateau, which means that uh, looking for ESG might be reached a point where it's a bit stagnant. Of the reasons specifically can be very wide, but the main issue is probably sitting together and setting the priorities again, what they think it's more relevant. And just building on what Abdullah said before about the beneficiary, this is the part where a lot of interviews said that would be game changing, because just stating that, for example, we've reached X number of people, this can be important and actually relevant. But the information, the direct feedback from these people is also very necessary and probably the most impactful part of it. So this is probably where the sector should shift a little and also see and pay attention to that.
So, Morgan, if we go back to the founders, you have worked with many of those. So, why do many founders produce only the minimum reporting required? Is it lack of skills, financial resources, or just rational behavior?
I think it's probably the latter. I think it's very rational in the position founders are in to not go the extra mile and really measure everything that could possibly be measured because they have a small team. They don't have much money. People do want to see results in terms of product and sales and revenue and traction. And so what we're seeing, I think, is a two-sided issue. Investors on one side often care about investing into impact startups. But then between deciding whether their money should go to a startup that has slightly more impact but slightly lower revenue and a startup that has slightly lower impact and higher revenue, a lot of the time people go for the latter and are going to try to get a little bit of extra financial gain. And since that is the case, founders rationally respond by trying to appeal to these investors and putting more resources into showing traction, showing revenue, showing growth, rather than maximizing all the impact statistics that we've often been told they think is just on page 70 of a PDF that the investor will never read. So that is really just a response to what the market looks like.
Okay. And Louisa, so very often impact investors say we support entrepreneurs. But then they ask the early stage entrepreneurs for so complicated reports that even large companies can't do it. So on the other hand, from the finance side, are impact investors indirectly or directly increasing the cost of capital for the very people they claim to support?
Yeah, this is one of the findings after the interviews. Again, we realized that the costs, the burden of costs in terms of creating and generating more comprehensive reports is usually, it goes to the startups or even smaller companies that are trying to have this impact measured. And the interviewees also said that it will be important from the perspective of who's more powerful in this relation to also get the costs. If they are demanding it, they should be looking into that. But again, this is an additional challenge.
Mm-hmm. And Abdullah, now if we look at humanitarian and human rights lens, when does the measurement becomes even burdensome or even extractive for beneficiaries? When does reporting serve the investor more than the community that the investor want to create impact?
The main problem that I understood is that many founders have, of course, different investors requiring also the use of different frameworks. They have also their own limited partners to to satisfy with the requirements they have. So founders face actually a big paradox. In one way, they receive the money to deliver the activities which are aimed for the people they are trying to serve, but at the same time the cost also is increasing because they need to adapt the way they are doing things more in the administrative side, using different frameworks. So it creates a lot of complexity, and they have to allocate resources, whether it be time or financially, to use these frameworks and comply with them. So it's just a big paradox. At the end, they kind of have to use more money into meeting the expectations from the investors rather than really using the money for the core and essential services they're trying to provide in the field.
And Morgan, going back to you, if you had to design a fair minimum impact pack that a serious founder could realistically report, what should be inside it? I mean, not 50 indicators, not a 70-page report, but a few basic things that really, really matters.
That is the $1,000,000 question, isn't it? Unfortunately, I will have to disappoint and say that that probably if we had that big clarity on that, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. My answer is that it depends on the sector. Definitely on the side of sort of green tech, that sort of thing, there are more things we can unify around. So these are things like, carbon saved, biodiversity restored, those sorts of things, which can then be translated into more specific, measurable outputs for the startups as well, so that they don't have to waste all of their energy on reporting impact instead of actually delivering the impact. In an ideal world, we wouldn't need impact measurement because all startups would be doing amazing work and all the investors would just magically detect the startups that are doing the best work. Of course, that's difficult. But then there are other sectors. In social impact, we might want to look at the people that we impact. How are their lifetime earnings increased? Also on the long term, difficult to measure. But those are going to be the sort of things we want to get at. And it will unfortunately be very dependent on the sector. My personal opinion is that as an investor who really has a strong intention of having an impact and of not burdening the founder, one of the most effective things to do is just having really deep, sharp conversations with the founder, with other members of the startup, to really try to understand what their theory of change is, how they are delivering this impact, and how seriously they actually take doing something good.
And Abdullah, so one of the most important distinction in the report is outputs are not the same as impact. So if we make it very clear, what is the difference between reaching people and changing lives?
So to make it simple, outputs is basically what we can easily count, and impact, real impact, is really about transformation. To what extent did the people's lives really change and how did it improve? So basically, outputs can be, for example, a company distributed 1,000 solar lamps to a specific area, and this is output. But to measure real impact, we should ask, did these solar lamps help students, for example, study in the evening when there is no lights, or did it really create more safety in the roads or in the streets? So it's really about real transformation. Did it improve the way that of the conditions of their lives?
What is the confusion? Like, what is the danger of this confusion of real change? Because a lot of times we see the numbers, we reach 50,000 people, what you are saying, but how did it change people's lives is actually not better. It's more difficult. Of course, you need to do it long term. You need to be spending some time with those beneficiaries and measure it. So what is the danger if you are confusing this counting with real change?
Well, the risk is mainly only counting and measuring outputs, which is good. It should be also useful, and it is, of course, useful, but it only acts as a first layer and it's not going beyond. And to really follow what impact investing is, it's not named output investing, it's called impact investing. So we should go beyond this first layer and really include, as I was saying before, a beneficiary feedback loop to really understand and try to measure how their lives actually change and to what extent what is it better than before the program or the project was distributed.
I think in the end, output is by definition what can be measured. So what you really want to do is align the output you measured as much as possible with the impact. And so maybe instead of just counting the people that you reached, you can add actually what's the depth of the impact you have had on each person. Do you count just anyone who's heard your name, or do you count people whose lives you've changed? From these people, how many of those are, from underserved parts and disadvantaged groups? How many of those are women? How many of those are maybe from groups that are, underrepresented? And these sorts of qualitative add-ons to just the headline numbers of people reached can really help to bring more understanding as to the real impact that a startup might have, even though we're just using output metrics that are the ones we're able to measure.
And in your report, in your experience, where is the beneficiary voice in all this? Are they actually asked what have changed in their lives, or it's rarely?
Well, it's mostly rare, but we do have a few examples where mainly social companies interested in tackling the extreme poverty issues, they do have this kind of feedback. But for in the environmental perspective, this is rarer, and this is where the challenge is probably at right now, and how the market will deal with that after all, if the market is willing to wait a few years to see if indeed the change has happened into this people's lives. And we wish we could answer to this particular question, but it's rather hard to know for now if, as I said, the market will be interested in seeing an impact, not just outputs.
And if people's lives are involved, what we are talking about here is measurement not just a paperwork, but a duty of respect?
Yes, it's more than the paperwork. It's probably how they are perceiving their own lives and how their daily routine has changed. And even in terms of health, in terms of education, all these very relevant aspects that count for maybe a whole generation. So, depending on what we're talking about, the impact itself can be tremendous. And of course, we've seen historically a lot of impact happening without the term impact investing. But still, since now we have more information, we should be using it wisely and in the best way possible.
Okay, now let's come to the hottest topic, AI and impact measurement. The original question of your research was whether AI can help harmonize impact measurement for everyone. And today, everyone wants to add AI to everything. But let's be honest, AI can become the newest shiny object in an already confused field. So, what can AI realistically do for impact measurement and for all the stakeholders, and what can it not do?
I think AI can be really supportive. It can really help, but it cannot solve the really deeper issue, which is about the incentives, as we said. But AI is really useful using different techniques such as NLPs, machine learning, and many others. It can help, for example, to navigate across these different frameworks, these complex frameworks, also to extract data and information and reducing all this repetitive work that the founders mainly are facing. So in that sense, AI can act as a supporting tool, but at the end of the day, the real issue is not about the tool or the technical problem, but it's really about incentives. So AI is helpful, but only as a supporting tool, as a first layer. But then there is this governance issue that needs to be solved first.
And that's exactly where that would be handy to know, Morgan, because you have been working with startups and innovation side. Shouldn't AI reduce the reporting burden for founders? For example, help translate one set of founder data into different investor reporting formats?
Yes, for the sort of very basic translational thing, there might be a big use for AI here. If you have a report that's targeted to one sort of impact investor, you could maybe rewrite it with AI, slightly change some things in order to target someone else. What AI won't be able to do is go to the beneficiary and sit down with them and ask them how they're doing. It won't be able to sort of actually see if your solar lamp is having an effect. It won't be able to have the exact calculation for how much CO2 is actually being saved from the atmosphere, etc. So it is helpful as an administrative tool at the moment to help founders do the reporting work and maybe make it a little bit more efficient. But a lot of the real places where the costs for the founder sit unfortunately can't easily be solved by slapping an AI solution onto it and calling it a day.
Exactly,
Right.
especially when it comes to the data. Because if the AI has to seek the data, then you are in a big trouble because AI has a massive issue with data corruption. So the founder has to provide the data.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and can the AI then polish it?
Presumably, depending on what exactly it is that you need, there can be a use for AI to sort of help, whether it's make some clearing up the data or helping you do the data analysis yourself. It's great for coding and that sort of thing. So if you want to use R or Stata or whatever to make some fancy graphs, AI will be great at that. Unfortunately, yeah, it can't do the actual data collecting work at the moment.
So, what would you say you should never give to AI to do when about impact measurement topic?
It's a good question. There is again this big challenge about data privacy or confidentiality. If you want to include beneficiaries, it's a really good thing, and as we said, it can be completely game changing. But again, it's also a question of setting rules and setting standards on which type of data can be used and how. So it's a question that still needs to be studied and actually ruled, because this is really relevant but also very sensitive right now. So AI can help, but to what extent, I couldn't say exactly where is the limit right now.
So you work together with the impact investing solutions, and your recommendation was very interesting. You said first convene investors around a shared minimalistic standard. So only then build AI as an operational support layer. Why is this sequence so important?
Well, I think it connects directly to what we mentioned in the beginning, the fact that the tool alone, unfortunately, doesn't say much. Well, tools alone are almost irrelevant, if we can be very straightforward here, because if the market, again, does not reward the use of this tool, then it won't be used. So, after all, again, it's a matter of incentives to use the tool. And if it exists, then it's fantastic. But hopefully, it has to exist and be used because the reasons behind that are quite solid.
Right. So basically, the world does need another acronym, another framework, right? So we need to find a shared minimalist standard for investors. It needs something that also changes us, our behavior, so we can become better human beings, in my opinion, and would really care about impact. From a founder in innovation ecosystem perspective, how can impact investing solutions help change what investors collectively ask from the founders? Morgan, what do you think?
I think really it is about agreeing. If you manage to gather a certain number of, a critical mass of impact founders in Switzerland, for example, or elsewhere, and get them together to agree these are the sorts of things we really care about. This is how we're going to make sure it is not an unrealistic burden for the founders where they will just not be able to do the project in the first place, but we still get a really good understanding of their impact. And so long as people agree on that minimalist set, and again, it has to be a minimalist set of standards, that will then help coordinate founders and incentives around that standard, where founders can sort of do the one-off reporting work and then share it more widely, but also have the incentive to, because that's where the money is. And they know that this impact measurement is being valued by the market.
I think one of the challenges was that if founder measures impact deeply and really measure it, they don't get funding faster, they don't get more funding. So it's really like, why would they do that then, right? So if in our system we could put right incentives to measure impact, because then the funding is faster and more money, I don't know, then it could provide incentives to care about the impact itself and also to measure it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Founders do want to have an impact. That's why they're in the space. But they are, again, rational actors. And if that burden that they're taking on isn't being rewarded, there won't be a reason for them to do it.
And Abdullah, how do you make it sure that this minimalistic standard does not become cold and mechanical? Or how do we keep the dignity, the beneficiary voice, and the real human change inside the system?
I think we need to be able to create some sort of openness from the investors to not seek for short-term results, but be open to be patient and wait a slightly longer, maybe 2 or 3 years, to really see if impact is created or not. Because at the end of the day, if they look for short-term results, then it's mainly about the outputs again. So try to keep this coalition of investors open to longer term results. That should also help to make sure it doesn't become mechanic again.
Okay.
Great. So, guys, it's I really motivate all the ones who are watching to read your report. It's really interesting. We will publish it also on our website very soon, and you can derive it, I guess, from the Graduate Institute of Geneva website. So read it, and if you're interested to collaborate with us and to build this coalition, to act on the report, because it's very important to go into action so we change something on this planet, then get in touch with us.
At Swiss Impact, we try to go, or we always like to go one layer deeper, because impact investment is not only technical, it is a purpose and love driven. So let me ask you, who are we as a sector if we claim to improve the world, but do not seriously ask whether the world improved from our actions? One short sentence from each of you.
First of all, thank you very much for your time here today. It was a great pleasure to talk and discuss with you about this topic. I'm really looking forward that our report is going, hopefully, to help the whole field and maybe change the mindset from the people working in this field and going towards a more human-centered and more real impact investing rather than focusing mainly on outputs. So I'm hoping that this report, this work we've done, will help shift towards this aim we have.
And Louisa?
Yes, well, I think Abdullah said mostly what I was thinking about. Indeed, the mindset, the change of mindset, it's very important at this point. And hopefully, the companies that are doing a very good job in impact investing should be a model for others, mainly in terms of the beneficiary voices. And after all, we all expect the very best from the field, and we want changes to happen for the best, of course. And thank you very much for having us. It was a pleasure.
And Morgan?
My one sentence would be a call to action. Let's break the credibility sufficiency equilibrium, and let's make sure that the founders that go the extra mile in impact measurement, in making sure that they are driving real change, get rewarded. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. So today's conversation reminds us that impact measurement is not just a reporting exercise. It's a question of honesty. Did something change? For whom? How do we know? Did we learn enough to do better next time?
And to be clear, the future of impact investment will not be decided by the number of frameworks we create. It will be decided by whether we have the courage to measure what really matters and the humility to act on what we learn. AI can certainly help. Frameworks can also help. Reports do help. But at the end of the day, they are just tools. The real question is whether investors, founders, and institutions are willing to raise the credibility float together. Because impact is not a slogan. Impact is what changes the real world when nobody's watching.
Right. So do not just ask, what impact do you claim? Ask, am I sincere in creating impact and measuring it? Or still profit goes first? And it's just a selfish game to look good, to show some kind of impact report, to get the money from investors and generate profit. So put impact and love first. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Thank you for sharing this space with us today.
Remember, real impact begins the moment you stop running from who you are.
Let today's story remind you that every soul carries light, even through darkness.
Until next time, stay open, stay human, and lead with love.